Welcome to Dash Talks Live. I'm Mark Stern, founder of custom box agency dash-and-cardex.com, and someone who believes great businesses aren't built by accident. They're built by design. On the show, we'll sit down with founders, builders, and bold thinkers to unpack how they're growing their business, designing unforgettable customer experiences, and turning great ideas into real momentum. If you're an entrepreneur who believes execution matters just as much as vision, then you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, Mark Stern here with another episode of Dash Talks Live. I'm here with the one and only Austin Bonderer. Austin, so good to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
And I'm excited to have someone else from Alabama. So it's not every day I get to come across someone else in this game that is associated with the state that I was born and raised in. So it's really nice having someone from the South come join us on our show. But for our listeners, I would love for you to just kick us off by just introducing who you are and what you do.
My name is Austin Bonderer. I am a patent attorney. I started off as an engineering student, ended up working at the patent office for 5.5 years, went to law school at night. Rest is history. Now I help people with their inventions, small companies, small inventors, mid-sized company. And I try to get people to protect their ideas so it gives them space to see if they can even market.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled to have you on to talk a little bit deeper about this topic, just because these are things that like so many people in the entrepreneur space come up with an idea, start to incubate and market, and then they don't even think about, am I protecting my IP? Am I taking the steps that I need to make sure? And so I'd love just to anchor at the beginning of this session, when is the right time to start thinking about, I need to file for a patent, or I should copyright or trademark this? At what point in the process would you tell someone you really need to be thinking about this? And the second question I'll have to this is, why should they be thinking about this?
Right. Well, each one of those has a different answer. Basically, the question I get all the time is, hey, how do I know if I have a possible invention? And my answer is, did you solve a problem? Now, once you solved a problem, you should probably start thinking, valuable problem. And as long as you do, when you get to that point, maybe you should talk to your patent attorney. And if you have a business or you're in this kind of space, you should just have a patent attorney that you talk to every now and then, just so that they stay on top of what your business is doing. Because a lot of times they'll be able to point out like, hey, you need to protect this well before you see it. So patents, whenever you solve a problem in mechanically and this kind of stuff, start talking to a patent attorney and see where they're at. Trademarks. Trademarks is basically, the misconception there is that the federal government gives you a trademark. They don't. As soon as you put something out in commerce with a name associated, identifying the source of goods or services, you have a trademark. What the registration does is provide nationwide protection and some other legal protections. One of the things that we also do is what's called an intent to use. Like, hey, I haven't really started my business yet, but these are the names I'm interested in. Now, we have to do that, it takes probably about 8 to 9 months, if everything goes smoothly, for you to know whether or not that name is available in your space. So you need to do some foreplanning about, hey, we're going to go to market in about 10 months. That's when you really need to start narrowing down your trademark or the name that you want to use if you want to get the federal registration. Now, copyrights, that's mainly entertainment law. I don't deal with it too much, but the way it truly works is as soon as you create something, you now have a copyright. There's not really a need to go out and get a copyright. Now, there are smart things of saying all rights reserved on your website, which basically lets everyone know that you are claiming your copy, your pictures as copyrighted material.
Yeah. And I'm curious, because there's a lot of things I'd love to delve a little bit deeper into with what you just said. First and foremost, you said, when I have an invention that helps people, this is something that you should consider patenting. If I was just to ask you, just in simple terms, how would you define invention?
Well, I mean, it's just, again, solving a problem. That's generally where it comes from. Now, part of the genius a lot of times is the answer is easy, but actually defining the problem was the hard part. And that's where you see a lot of, visionaries. People really don't see these things as a problem, but they do. And then they solve that problem, and then they get rewarded because they created a whole new space of invention and products and this kind of stuff. I mean, no one was demanding a smartphone, but guess what? That's what Jobs wanted. That's what Jobs got. And it's just amazing to me if you really think about it. I think smartphones have only been around for 15 years? Is that what we're looking at? And no one thought we needed it. I mean, RIM, I guess, did it with BlackBerry, but, it was not even close to what he...
I'm thinking about when I got my first smartphone, because I want to say it had to be, I went to college in 2003, which, again, It doesn't sound like that was that long ago, but it was actually a long time ago. It was over 20 years ago. And I don't even think I had a smartphone then. I think smartphones were starting to emerge at the early 2000s, like mid 2000s. So you're right to say how that's disrupted the game so completely, because who would have thought about putting your music and your photography and 500 other applications onto a single device that can fit into your pocket? It was just not something that you had ever. I just like remember growing up, I always had the big CD player that was oversized and took up way too much space on the desk. And like now it's a simple speaker that can hide in the corner linked to Bluetooth or a wireless network, which is crazy to see how far we've come in that time frame.
Well, I know people who still can't lose their iPod because it has all their old music on it.
Oh my goodness. And I even take it a step further there, because my dad still has his 8-track tape players and vinyl record sets. And I just read a statistic that vinyl records for the first time in like 19 years had like their largest year of sales, because the technology went away. And then I think this is also this mark of a trend that we're seeing, which is analog physical products are making a reemergence as we live in this age of AI, and everything's going so extremely digital that people are yearning for more human connection and more real, because everything in the online space is starting to look the same in some ways. When everyone is kind of like, it's on an exponential. We're producing content faster than we ever have. And so you're seeing this shift of, I want more human connection, that we're starting to see in the marketplace in a big way. I'm curious, filing for a patent in the US, is it you're only covered in the US, or do you need to approach it differently for a global market? And if it's on a global market, is it then you have to go country by country? Or how do you protect on a global scale? Or is it it's just not the same game?
It's exactly what you said. I mean, all patents are local. That's just basically how it is. So if you have a U.S. patent, it's based in the U.S. Now, say you're building something. Trying to get a patent in the EU is very expensive, very difficult. They're very draconian about their rules. It's not as easygoing as the United States, so requires much larger applications because every word matters, and that's just basically the way it is. So what I tell my clients is like, look, if you're building a product, let's look at where they build it. And of course, Asia and these areas. So I'm like, let's not spend all your money on trying to get you protection in the EU. Let's control the manufacturing, because even if someone you don't have patent protection in the European Union, you hope you have a competitive advantage in the manufacturing in low cost centers, because to borrow a line from Dune, he who controls the manufacturing controls the universe, because you can still beat that person in Europe on an economic level as opposed to enforcing your patent. Because if you're able to build it cheaper than they are, you win.
Yeah. He who controls manufacturing controls the universe. Good quote. Totally get that too. I would love to pivot slightly to something that we were talking about before we started this session, and that is around, we're now living in this age of AI, which provides amazing opportunity, but it also opens up risk. And for a lot of our listeners, I don't think a lot of people are talking about the risk side unless you're a more enterprise establishment where you're trying to truly protect your business on a broader scale. And so the question I would ultimately have for you is, someone who is new to business, new to the online space, or they may have been established but haven't been thinking about, do I have the right checks and balances in place? With this rise of AI, what is your perspective in terms of how you would advise on protecting people, protecting their IP, and not just jumping in and saying, oh, we could just put all of our information in AI and it's going to know my business brilliantly and I should have no concerns in the world? Because it's just going to help me move faster. Yep. What is your whole take on this rise of AI in business?
Just act like you're telling somebody who has a microphone and is telling everybody about it. It's not that, obviously, just because you put in AI doesn't go out to everyone, but that information is now in their system. It became part of their model. Now, so when anyone tries to access something like that, they now have access to what you taught it. So you need to be wary about what you put in there, because especially with patents, and no court has actually said this yet. This is only derived from something else. A court in New York, and I think it was a federal court, said that an attorney breached and a client breached attorney-client privilege because they used AI. And the terms of service are, anything you put in, we own. And that's the case with all these learning language models, as far as I know. I know some of them are, they say they're in a sandbox and all this stuff. I don't trust it until a court comes out and says it's okay to do it. I tell my clients, don't do it, because disclosure kills patents.
Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of how Facebook, I'll use as an example. There's times that I feel like I have a conversation with my friends, and then I open up my Facebook news feed, and it's almost like Facebook was listening to me, and it's starting to put ads and recommendations and it could be happenstance and coincidence, but there's an element of me that thinks that we may think these systems are simple, not realizing the amount of data it's aggregating on us as an individual. And I would imagine that these AI networks are just thirsty for whatever data it can get on you and you individually, because the more data points it has about you, the more it's going to be able to customize like what it starts to show you to you, whether it's good or bad. And that doesn't mean that they can run queries to really understand people like me and what we're searching for, to have more data points on us to be able to market to us in a different way. I've heard rumblings that ChatGPT may eventually roll out like a paid version. And if they start getting sponsors in there, it could fundamentally change the algorithm and the intention behind it, which means, in my mind, the more data you feed it.
A great product from a company called OpenAI.
Yeah. Great product. That's amazing. Yeah. Can you talk me through, just for the listeners, I would love for you just to introduce kind of expectations around patenting and the patenting process. Because it's not as simple as I want a patent, you fill out a form, and within 24 hours, you have a patent. It's a bit of a process that you undergo. And so I'd love for your take that if someone was working and you're just setting expectations around the process, what should they expect?
Well, the first thing I explain to everyone is that, a lot of people think a patent is a wall and it protects you like a wall would. I'm like, actually, it's more like a minefield, and anyone can get through a minefield. It's just how hard, how difficult and how expensive will it be? So, one of the things that we do is that we go and we try to get your first patent. Sometimes we take what the examiner is giving us and then we go back for what's left on the table, stuff that we have to argue more for, fight more for. And the reason we do that is because we want to fortify that minefield, because we don't know where the enemy's coming from. We're just putting the mines out there. We're doing the best we can. So then another thing that we try to do, as I explain, is like, look, if you're actually producing these products, we need to do what I call continuation practice. I mean, everyone calls it continuation. But what that is that you keep the patent alive. And what I mean by that is that before patent issues, we filed a child application. Now that patent family is still alive. We can kind of make changes. We can change things, because little words in the claim can change the whole meaning of the claim. So if the patent family is still alive, all of a sudden the knockoffs come for us, we know where they're coming from. So hopefully we have a disclosure in the original document to set the minefield where they're coming from and catch them. And so that's the way we try to add more insurance to their market of their product.
And with the patent, even if you have a patent, if someone does come into your minefield, you still need to take the action against them to protect your field if they start to come in. It's not something that the government or someone's going to come in, USPTO is going to come in and be like, you can't do that. It's more of a lot of what we're looking at here is, it's one of the best investments I've ever made as an entrepreneur, is having the right legal counsel and the right partnership on the sphere, because what you don't want to do is reach out to lawyers when you need them. You want to make sure you put the systems in place to allow a lot of the mitigation of the process, as opposed to, oh no, I'm in a pickle and I need your help right now, Austin. It's a lot different landscape, and it's a lot more high stress when you're reactionary as opposed to being a little bit more proactive. And so a lot of what you're talking about is, let's be proactive to protect your business. But if someone comes in and I don't want to speak for you, but my understanding would be, you put the minefield in place, but you still have to be the one to protect the business if something were to happen.
Correct. And, everyone's talked about it. It's true. Intellectual property, patent litigation is very expensive. So that can be a sword and a cudgel. Like, it can be good or bad for you. Sometimes when you're threatening people, they are so scared of the cost that they're going to have to do to defend it, that you almost have a bigger bully behind you and they acquiesce. Sometimes they call your bluff, and now you're having to spend all this money to enforce your patent. And I would say kind of one of the best things that's happened for especially consumer products has been Amazon, because Amazon has a process by which, if you have a patent, you go to them and you say, hey, I believe these people are infringing my patent. And you put up a bounty. It used to be $5,000. I'm not sure what it is now. And then it goes to what they used to call an Amazon neutral. And basically it was a person that would decide whether or not, under very strict rules, if this product was infringing your patent. If it was, they'd be kicked off. So this was a lot more effective, cost-effective way of enforcing your patent on the largest consumer website there.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that that opportunity existed. And I love how you framed it of putting up a bounty, and then they'll do the investigation internally. And I mean, they are your third party, and they're also the ones who control. So they can take action to remedy it and fix it right away because you're keeping it within the Amazon ecosystem. So I didn't even know that that was a thing that they had to offer. That's fascinating. Makes sense though. For those of
Because they're just as liable.
yeah,
They
it makes
can be in
sense.
trouble too. Yeah.
And they also found a new revenue stream for them. So it's a brilliant model as well, to be able to say not only can we protect you, but it opens up a new avenue for them as
Well, the
well.
way if I remember correct, the loser
Hey,
pays and the winner gets their money back.
even better. I like that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then because in that model, the loser may withdraw without even having the contention with the fear of it's easier for me to pull as opposed to pay a $5,000 bounty or whatever the bounty may be.
I will say there's one thing, and I'm surprised there hasn't been a lawsuit about it. Maybe there's just not enough coming around it yet. But I always get calls around September from possible clients saying, hey, I just got kicked off Amazon. And what I've seen in this is Christmas shopping's coming up. Companies are probably unscrupulous and claim that they're violating patents. Get them kicked off until after Christmas, and then oh, never mind. We're okay.
So that makes sense. Q4, the craziest time of year in physical products or e-com. And so it is an interesting strategic play too, especially during the busiest season of the year. Because we know even with our physical products and custom box agency, you got to be careful Q4 because it's such a different game because even shipping rates at that time of year increase temporarily for the holiday season rush. And then they go back down in January. And that's a trend that we see year over year. For our listeners, is there anything that we've not touched on that you'd like to highlight? One of the questions I love to ask is what is something that you're working on within your business that you're really excited about right now?
Well, I guess that's the biggest things. My main focus is patents. Trademarks have a time component to it. I had a client who was in business for 50 years, and then we applied for a trademark registration and we got it. There's no harm, no foul. Granted, you want it sooner rather than later because of the protections, of course. But the problem with patents, and a lot of people do, is disclosure. They tell people about it. They're very excited about this problem that they solved. Or, it's like, I tell people it's like their baby. They want to show their baby. Like, look at my baby. I'm like, don't show anyone your baby. Keep it quiet. If you really must talk to someone about it, just to let it all out, talk to a patent attorney. That conversation is confidential. And the other thing that a lot of people do is like, well, I had someone sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'm like, well, what was their promise? What did they get in exchange for the promise of keeping quiet? Nothing. They're my best friend. They just signed it and that's it. I'm like, that's not a binding non-disclosure agreement. Non-disclosure agreement is just like any other contract. You need a quid pro quo. So unless you're promising them something in exchange for them keeping it quiet, it's not a valid NDA.
Yeah. What's a good litmus to understand, is this patentable? I know that you said if it helps people was one of the anchors that you had said previously when we started this conversation. Is there how could I ignite that light bulb in their head that kind of gives them that, okay, I wasn't thinking about this before, but this absolutely should be something I should be patenting. How do you give them that framing to understand that is something that's patentable?
What I always say is, did you solve a problem? Yeah. If you've solved a problem, then you should start thinking about maybe this is patentable, reach out to an attorney. And if you're, feel really good about it, then we do move to the next step, which would be a prior art search to see if it is even patentable in view of the prior art.
Well, makes sense. And so for those who are listening, my biggest piece of advice is if you have a question of whether or not this is patentable, reach out to Austin, reach out to a patent attorney, engage in a conversation, do it to a trusted authority. Don't do it to a best friend, because at the end of the day, especially if you have a solution that truly helps people or solves a massive problem, protect your IP, protect your idea. And now it's the same thing even in me. There's so many little things in our business that we should probably be considering filing a patent for that we're not even thinking about. And it also reminds me of Shark Tank, because it's one of the first questions that they ask on Shark Tank is, do you own the patent of this? So, it's one of those things to say, don't sleep on this, because then what may happen is someone else solves the same problem and they file the patent, and all of a sudden you're in a position that, and are you protected if someone filed a patent later on, if it's something that I had been doing in my business for years, but never filed the patent? Is there anything around first use that protects you? Or not really?
Yeah, there's things about prior use and this kind of stuff. Was it secret prior use? And then you might be able to maintain using what you're doing, because say you've used it as a trade secret, but then someone came out and figured it out and then released it. And came out with a patent. So you can only invalidate a patent application if there was public disclosure, anyone's public disclosure file the day before you file. But your own public disclosure, you have up to a year that it can't be used against you. So, there are times when we'll go through and, people are explaining to me that they have an idea, an invention, manufacturing, this kind of stuff. And then sometimes we're like, maybe we should look into trade secrets. Because one of the problems with like method of manufacturing patents is I can only sue you if I know what you're doing. Right? Manufacturing is done behind a wall. You can't see what's going on. You only consume. And then if you don't have to release this information, maybe it will behoove you for more than 20 years because once you disclose it, it's disclosed. And unscrupulous people can, pull that into their process and you may never know because all you see is the end product. You don't see how it got there. So sometimes when we're doing manufacturing products, we're like, hey, can we keep this in a black box? And, one of my favorite ones is there was this restaurant in LA called Crustacean. They're known for their garlic noodles. Supposedly the family was part of the cook for the royal family of Vietnam before everything went down there. They have a kitchen inside a kitchen where only the family members can make the garlic noodles. That way, that secret stays with them. And therefore, that trade secret, they can protect it. Like, say, one of the family members went rogue. There are, things in place that would, enable you to protect them.
Yeah, interesting. It makes me think of here in Austin or in Texas, we have two families that are competing Italian families, which are the Mendolas versus the Carrabba's, which if you've ever been to a Carrabba's restaurant, that I believe that they're all over the place. Mendolas and Carrabba's are the same family, and there's the same essence in all of it. And so I'd be interested to know, what the story would have been had the right things been put in place. Not saying that they're not. I don't know anything about it. I don't represent Mendolas or Carrabba's, so don't quote me on this. But It's two very Texas, one family in Texas that spun off, and the restaurants are different, but they have the same essence and vibe. And so I always wonder about things like exactly what you just hyped with the garlic noodles, what could you have done to protect one another? And they may not have wanted, they may have been happy splitting in the capacity that they did. But something else that we had talked about that I'm actually curious about with all of this. A lot of people right now, when it comes to building a new offering or building a new service or productizing something of what they do, they'll spend a lot of time with the LLMs, ChatGPT, Claude, you name it, flushing out a concept, coming up with a business plan. They may be leveraging Claude Code to build out proprietary software and whatnot. When we start to look at a lot of these accelerators that are leveraged by a lot of the different AI tools that are out there, can you protect or patent that IP that you co-created with the LLMs? Or is it one of those things that because of the nature of how you did it and because of the terms and service of these platforms, you're at a lot higher risk state as a result of brainstorming and co-creating with an AI platform, a third-party tool?
Right. So the way the guidance from the United States Patent Office for them has been if you were the main driver of the innovation and you used AI, you could still patent. But if AI invented it, only a person can be an inventor.
Yeah.
So they have that. But just also understand software in terms of patents has been pretty much decimated after the Alice decision. Yeah. So when it comes to software, that's when I go back to that black box. Like, hey, you call me and you're like, is there any way you can keep that code secret? But even when we could get patents for software, it would take like 5 years. And software engineers, all they have to do is push enter and they've changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like you got to retool a line, you got to do all this stuff. So I can't tell you how many times they'd be like, hey, thanks for getting us this patent. We stopped doing that 3 years ago. It's like, okay, well, here's your patent. So
yeah, I was going to say 5 years in the game of business at this age that we live in, like what worked now is there's a good chance that 5 years from now it's going to be obsolete or the innovation curve has evolved in a way that it doesn't make sense today, but it's just kind of like this back and forth of, and then, I think that we're heading to an age, especially with software, that before we could buy a license to a software platform, I have a membership to the software platform. Now I think we're going to find that with how apps are being produced so quickly using AI, you're going to have elementary school students that are building apps in class to help them do their work better, which is their own proprietary tools that they could sit down and be like, I want something that does X, and they're able to do it at scale. And it's such a different world that we live in, which I don't even want to get into what the implications of are that on business. And patenting and protecting your IP when everything is becoming so commoditized so quickly as a result of what we're seeing out there. Out of curiosity, the patenting process, if I were to ask you, Is there a budget range that you say typically a patent process to go through a process and work with an attorney typically falls within the $5,000 to $10,000 range, the $1,000 to $3,000 range? I want to say that filing trademarks can be between, anywhere from 500 to 3,000 from what I've seen, but that's not patents. Is there a budget range that's typical, or is it really, it just depends on the complexity and it just runs the gamut? It just depends.
It can run the gamut, but at the minimum, you're probably looking at at the minimum, at least $8,000.
Yeah.
There are companies out there that promise you the world for, a couple $1,000s. But if you've ever dealt with people who've dealt with those companies before, a lot of times they'll keep asking you for more money for new little things. And so, I suggest, talk to a patent attorney first before you work with some of these, well-known national companies that they claim to help inventors. Type thing. And the reason why I think a lot of those companies have done well is that they promise the next step. Because I tell people all the time, you come to my office, we're going to spend all this money on a patent. If you don't have a business plan to get it to market and produce it yourself, this is probably the process we should be doing. Because a lot of people think that you're in that fable, you build a better mousetrap, the world will be the path to your door. It's not really true. What companies want to see is marketability. You have to prove that it has a market. Once you do that, then they're willing to pay you a lot of money because you have it patented. But very seldom are you going to show up to a company and they're going to be like, yes, we love your idea so much, we're going to pay you for the chance to see if it works.
Yeah. I mean, I would even say if you haven't validated it, if you don't have a crystal clear go-to-market plan, you're just wasting money at that point, because especially if you're working with entrepreneurs have the habit of pivoting and getting exciting about a concept and going all in on it temporarily and then scrolling to the next thing. And part of this is if you're actually going to go to the process, then you want to make sure that this is something you're committed to, that there's market viability there, that there's truly an opportunity. Because if it's an invention that helps people, then once it's patented, you're just protecting you and your marketplace positioning so much more.
Yeah. I mean, what I tell them is that, getting a patent's not easy, but it's the easiest part of the process that you're going to go through. Yeah. Because, I don't know if you remember the underwear gnome economic theory. It's probably one of my favorite little things. Do you remember this one or no?
Well, no, tell me, what was the brand again?
It was South Park episode. And it was basically these underwear gnomes came and stole all their underwear. Like, hey, why are you selling all these underwear? It's like it's part of the business plan. Business plan, step 1, steal underwear. Step 2, who knows? Step 3, profit. And it's that who knows that most people have a hard time with, because that's where the rubber meets the ground. I mean, that is the tough part of slogging through, getting your stuff manufactured, setting up, transport, doing all the nuts and bolts stuff. And it takes a lot. You have to become a master of all trades at that.
That's hysterical. I love that you did a South Park reference like that. But that is and there's so many nuances in South Park that is such a fun play off of pop culture or what's going on. But the idea of, again, still underwear, who knows, is part 2, and then profit.
Yeah.
Is the mindset of a lot of business owners of, what, we'll do this thing it's, we've gotten calls from people that have been like, this is going to be big. And I'm like, awesome. And that's where it ends, basically, is we're going to do this and it's going to be big, and everything in the middle of how are we going to make it big? Is the market there? Is the interest there? Are they asking for it? Is it solving a problem? It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out later. But, it's just not how you should approach starting and growing a business or introducing a new innovation. I know we're just about at time. And so I always like to ask one final question, which is, where can people learn more about you?
Lucky enough, I'm the only Bonderer patent attorney in the U.S. as far as I know. So all you got to look up is Bonderer Patents. You can find my website. I also have a bunch of educational reels that you can find on TikTok, Instagram, Amazing. Facebook, all that fun stuff. Maybe Facebook. But yeah, it's out there. So
for those who are listening, this is another episode of Dash Talks Live. If you ever have any questions about patents, by all means, Austin, do you service people primarily in the U.S., in the southeastern states, or do you service people all over the country?
All over. I have offices. I have an office in California, office in Florida, and office in Alabama.
Perfect. So for anyone who's listening, please reach out to Austin, especially if you're looking at getting something patented, and just trust the process from there on out. Austin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and for those who are listening, if you want to be on a future episode of Dash Talks Live, just go to dashtalkslive.com, fill out the form, and we'd love to have you as a guest. This is Austin and Mark. Thank you all so much. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you for joining me, Mark Stern, on this episode of Dash Talks Live. If something in this conversation sparked an idea for you, take a moment to share this episode with another entrepreneur who could benefit from it. And if you think you'd be the next best guest for Dash Talks Live, come visit us at dashtalkslive.com, fill out the form, and join us for a future episode. Be sure to follow the show so you don't miss future conversations with founders and builders who are creating what's next. And if you want to learn more about designing your own customer journeys and experiences, come visit us at customboxagency.com and have a free consultation. Meet with a member of our team. Until next time, keep building with intention. Cheers.